Hello, welcome to Majority Rules. This is Season 1, Episode 2. We've made it. We haven't been canceled yet, you guys, so yay for us. So this is a podcast about Mizzou athletics, majority, which is Olympic sports athletes. So you'll notice there's only 3 of us here today. So I'm Karen. I'm the host, I guess. I'm also a softball gymnastics beat writer and the Olympic sports manager at Rock M Nation. And let's go to you, Matthew.
I'm Matthew Gustafson, the beat writer for volleyball and wrestling at Rock M. You're going to hear a lot more volleyball from me today, but a little bit of wrestling news that popped up as well.
And then you, Dillon?
From my end, it's I'm Dillon Heinrich. I'm currently the beat writer for soccer and women's basketball. Same thing with soccer in season. Got a lot more soccer news to talk, but of course, got a little bit of women's basketball news to sprinkle on at the very end, which I'm very excited about.
Awesome. And then Rory and I guess Abigail could not be with us tonight. So I'll have some updates from Rory, who covers all the rest of the sports that we don't have a main person assigned to at Rock M Nation. And then Abigail covers the running and the jumping sports. So track and field and cross country. And I have a couple updates for that. So let's get started with in-season sports updates. So Dillon, let's go to you.
Yeah, so after week 1, Mizzou was 1-1 in soccer. Started off pretty hot. Then this past week had a couple hiccups. You go on the road against an Illinois team that very much a rivalry matchup. These have been back and forth these past couple of years. It looked pretty physical, pretty chippy early on. Couple really good chances for Mizzou in the first half. Can't break through. Illinois finally gets a goal late in the second half, but Mizzou is able to come back and finally tie it up in the last 12, 13 minutes or so on a play from Jessica Larson that she shot on goal, hit off the goalkeeper's hand, and then Milena Fisher, right spot, right time. She didn't even really kick it in. It just sort of like hit off her belly into the goal, which was more than enough to get the job done. So ended with a tie game with about 10 minutes left. The teams were going back and forth. Saw a lot of tackles, a lot of fouls, pretty severe yellow card handed out each way. But other than that, not too much to say. Bragging rights split right down the middle, 1-1 tie. Sent things back to Columbia when Missouri was taking on St. Louis, who was ranked number 23 entering the contest. They had a weird 2 games. They tied against University of Missouri, Kansas City, which don't have the greatest soccer team in the world, if we're just being honest, and then proceeded to go back home and tie BYU, who, in case you don't know, is a top 10 team in NCAA women's soccer. So really had no idea what to expect out of this team. So Mizzou, once again, really early on, had a couple really good chances. Kylie Simmons, again, just continues to get so close. Had a beautiful header that just hit off the crossbar and was cleared out by the Billikens. Eventually, St. Louis broke through in the end of the first half, which was actually the first time in these first 4 games that Mizzou had allowed a first half goal. So Billikens break through right before halftime, proceed to add one in the middle of the second half while Mizzou couldn't quite break into the offensive end. They had a couple really good shots down the road. Simmons still looking for that first goal so far, pushed another one that went just wide. And I said it in my recap. I don't know if the offense is cursed or anything, but someone's got to check that field for hexes because there's a couple of strange things happening. Because there's they've had a lot of really good shots. They've been out shooting their opponents. They've had ones that just go wide. The goalie makes a miraculous save, or again, it just hits off the crossbar. I think that, you could just argue it's a finishing problem. They did have one last year, and I think we're starting to see it a little bit more this year when it comes to just not being able to put the ball in the right spot. But that's not as fun as a curse. So I'm gonna roll with that for a little bit and see where we're at in this next week, which is pretty slow. They've got one game this Thursday, and then after that, they've got a week off. So it's going to be a little bit of rest and recovery for this team.
Who do they play on Thursday?
So on Thursday, they take a road trip to Miami, Florida. They're going to play the Miami Hurricanes. So it's of course, a Power 4 opponent, but so far Miami hasn't been looking too hot. They lost their home opener to North Florida 1-0, tied against Florida Atlantic 1-1, and then lost 1-0 to Princeton on the road. So 3 mid-major opponents all able to either beat or tie with the Hurricanes. They've only scored 1 goal through their first 3 matches, so I would expect this game to be very low scoring. Whoever gets that first goal is going to have a huge advantage, if not probably be the outright winner. So I think for Mizzou, it'll come down not only to starting fast. They've done a really good job in those first 20 minutes and those last 20 minutes, but when it comes to getting that first goal, actually finishing the job, I think if they can do that, you got to feel really good about their chances on the road.
Yeah, I noticed.
What do you suggest to get rid of? Sorry, Matthew.
I'm glad that you talked about those first 20 minutes. There was a noticeable difference in that SLU match. I think that you saw them kind of really controlling possession more frequently than they usually do in the midfield, and then they were also, if they took possession, they were counterattacking with some success. Once you got Simmons out of the game, right, that just completely shut down. The offense shut down. There was no counterattack to speak of, and I think that really hurt them. One of the other things I noticed was just how similar that match was to Memphis, right? Top 25 team, you lose 2-0. You're in it for a good amount, and then all of a sudden just wheels fall off the wagon, and then in the last couple of minutes, you give up that second goal, so the score is worse than the actual match was.
I was just going to ask, like, talking about curses, what do you think they should do to get rid of it? Like, what are your favorite curse getting rid of remedies? You know, like, what should we do?
Oh boy. I think there's a couple really good options. I think my favorite one is definitely the symbolic trash can. Either everyone throws something into the pile, or they all choose one collective item, and then they decide to burn that right in the middle of Audrey J. Walton, of course, fire code permitting. I think that way, kind of a team. There you go. Ted Lasso, I think, was one who used it. Very similar. I know they had a Ted Lasso game last year, and if they had one this year, that would be very fitting. So I think that might be my personal approach if I was Stephanie Golan here today.
Okay. I've got a good one. I don't know if it'll work for soccer, though. Hire Theo Epstein. Work for the Red Sox and the Cubs. Why not Mizzou Soccer?
Yeah. Bring him on as a grad assistant somehow.
Now let me see if I can pull up this tweet from the cool goal that you were talking about. Give me just a second.
Yeah, well, while she's working on that, I might as well mention my MVPs were Jessica Larson and Milena Fisher for this goal. I think Milena Fisher, she's got 2 goals already this year. She's been very effective both on the defensive side, but especially on the offensive side, facilitating and being able to actually finish those goals. Got the first one of the season and came up in the clutch from being in the right spot against Illinois. And Jessica Larson, like, she's just so underrated on this roster. She's out there. She is so quick. Like, you don't realize how fast she moves in comparison to everyone else unless you specifically watch her. She's also very shifty with the ball. She moves up, down. I think I said this on Mizzou Sports Daily. She's Mizzou Soccer's Allen Iverson. She's just moving at a different speed than everybody else. So I'm very excited to see what she can do in these next couple of years. But I think the only thing for her is that finishing ability. But even then, her shots on goal, her passing ability is very impressive.
Doesn't look like we have the sound for it, but I don't know how to do that part.
But if you could see on that play, like, that's all Jessica Larson getting that shot on goal, and then Milena Fisher coming out to meet her, not giving up on that play. And it's not really a shot, but sometimes it doesn't have to be a shot. All it has to do is be a goal.
The volume would be helpful. Nice.
So yeah,
that
I think
seems
that's
very MVP worthy.
just about everything I got from soccer.
Awesome.
I would
Matthew, let's go to you for some
Alrighty.
volleyball.
So we
We
talked
just had
about the black and gold scrimmage
Yeah.
in the first episode. Now they had an exhibition against Omaha. The Mavericks, coming off of their first ever NCAA tournament appearance, they won the Summit League, and they look like they could be poised to do that again. You may remember Omaha from the spring and that great NCAA softball regional. That's the same one, right? So they ended up sweeping 25-23, 25-23, 25-20. And I'm just going to give you some of the main takeaways. First off, talked about how there were returning 6 of 7 starters. Well, one of the starters was actually swapped out for a transfer. Morgan Eisenberg, who was actually in the top 10 in blocks in the SEC last year, was replaced in the starting lineup by Illinois State transfer Reagan Haith. Now, one of the keys here, Haith is, I believe, 6'2" compared to 6'0" for Eisenberg. Eisenberg was one of the shortest, if not the shortest, middles in the SEC last year. So that may be just a tactical decision, trying to get some more height out on the floor. But it was the other starting middle blocker, Colleen Finney, who was arguably the most impressive in the exhibition. She had 6 kills and 8 blocks. She looked very good out on the court there, both offensively, defensively. I think she's going to play a bigger role on the offense this season than she did last year. And then obviously the defense. But you really only saw one middle blocker on the court at a time for Mizzou, which is not really something that happened that frequently last year. They would usually have 2 a lot of the time. But instead, what they were doing was they would either have 2 outside hitters and a right side hitter on the court, or they would have a libero and a defensive specialist. So they would have Maya Sands and then most of the time Carolise Perez-Catila out on the floor together. And that's not really something that you saw last season from Dawn Sullivan. So it seems like she's doing some different tactical things this year, which makes a lot of sense because she has depth that she did not have last season. So she's able to do different things tactically and have it be more effective. One of the reasons that you may see that libero-Diaz combination, transfer Michael Vernon, who's going to be replacing Delar Getacola as that second outside hitter in the lineup, did have some struggles in terms of serve receive and in terms of passing serve receive. She had 2 consecutive times where she was targeted, made a mistake on those plays. But when she does get into the front row, she was an absolute beast on the court. 11 kills. I think it was something like 3 blocks. Just incredible stats. She's pretty clear that she is a very, very good player and could be a very impactful player for this team. And one of the things that struck me about Vernon's performance was just she has a ridiculous vertical leap. And I asked Colleen Finney about it after the match, and she said, yeah, Vernon probably has the highest vertical leap. She jumps higher than anybody else on that team. I legitimately would like to see her at the rec try to dunk a basketball. She's only 5'11", 6 feet, but honestly, I think she could do it. That was how much air she was getting underneath, which does go a long way to help with some of those height issues, although Mizzou has gotten taller as a team. Now, overall, it's clear they're still working out some things. Like I said, serve receive, there were some issues there. There were times where the blocking wouldn't show up as much, or they were having a string of like attack errors where they were just having trouble finding an open spot on the floor or getting it inbound. But that being said, they swept a team that very likely could be in the NCAA tournament again this season, but they're going to need that experience because they have a couple of very tough matches to start off. They've got Drake on Friday. I'm going to be covering that one. Drake finished runner-up in the Missouri Valley Conference. They made it to the NIVC, which is kind of like the NIT of collegiate volleyball, made it to the grade 8. They're returning some quality players, including the libero of the year. But the big one to watch is going to be Saturday. They're facing Creighton, 12th ranked Creighton in Omaha as part of the Blue Jay Invitational. It's being hosted by Creighton, and they're going to be the favorites in the Big East this year. They've got 2 All-American outside hitters. So I do wonder if they go with multiple middle blockers more often than you saw against Omaha, right? Facing a lower caliber team, still pretty good, but lower caliber in Omaha. You can afford to have 3 hitters on the floor at the same time, only have 1 middle out there. If you have 2 All-American outside hitters like Creighton does, then you may end up having to put 2 middle blockers out there. It may make more tactical sense. That's something that we'll look into. And then Sunday, they've got NC State, arguably a snub from the NCAA tournament last year. They went 12-6 in the ACC. They actually beat Louisville, who I believe ended up going to the Elite Eight. They're probably going to be in the Elite Eight again this year, one of the best volleyball programs in the country. So 2-1 is the realistic goal here. And that would still be a very good outcome, even if it's the expected one, because none of these 3 teams are going to be an easy match, right? They're all quality opponents. Obviously, Creighton is in a league of its own, but wins over Drake and NC State are definitely going to be looked at favorably when it comes time for tournament seeding all the way in December. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. It's only the first weekend, but these are the things you have to think about. And it seems like they have, because I think I mentioned this on the last episode. It really did hurt them a little bit, their non-con schedule last year, I believe, in terms of seeding. So it definitely seems like they're taking some really solid steps. I will say it's going to be a very uphill battle against Creighton, but if they can beat Creighton in Omaha at Creighton, that is going to be a very, very positive indicator for the rest of the year. And if they sweep, they may be in the top 25 this time next week.
Dear Rock M Plus listeners, readers, and subscribers, we are thrilled to announce our first ever digital Mizzou football review magazine. Inspired by the iconic newsstand staples like Athlon, Phil Steele, and Street and Smith, our team has created a PDF file jam-packed full of content for you to learn about the most anticipated Missouri football season maybe in history. Checking in at about 100 pages, we have in-depth previews of all 12 opponents, analysis of each position group, profiles of newcomers, exclusive photographs, features like a retrospective on the 2014 team, the evolution of Faurot Field, Luther Burden's place in Mizzou history, and more. We also have an analytics Q&A with Bill Connolly of ESPN, the founder of Rock M. We also have college football preview content and much more. This digital magazine is available now. It is $15 for purchase, with discounts available for premium Rock M Plus subscribers based on your membership tier. $10 for monthly members, $5 if you have an annual membership. Now is the time to become a member to secure your discount on this one-of-a-kind product today. We know that you're going to love this magazine, and we can't wait to have it on your devices. MIZ.
That's exciting. So I did see they did share this social media post. Look at me getting all these things going. Watch again. I'll get it together sometime, you guys.
See the running out of the tunnel with the smoke, Miami Hurricane style.
These creative people from Mizzou are so amazing. Let's just watch a movie, guys. So while that's playing, Matthew, how was the crowd for the exhibition game? I think you had talked a little bit about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I think that the crowd for the exhibition may have actually been smaller than the one for the scrimmage. Part of that is probably, I think they may have offered some incentives for students to show up to the scrimmage, but overall, still pretty solid for an exhibition match. I think that the attendance for the first 3 matches of the season at Hearns isn't necessarily going to indicate how much attendance they get for the rest of the year, because those are kind of oddly timed out matches, right, where you may have one match that's starting somewhere around 11 a.m., things like that. but I think that they're going to have really good attendance. They had a 240% increase in attendance from 2022 to 2023. The word's out about this team a little bit more. And obviously, if you're winning, if they get into the top 25, then that's going to get people's attention. And I do think that getting into the top 25 by either the end of the non-conference schedule or after the first weekend or two of the SEC schedule is a pretty realistic goal for this team.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your updates. So pretend I'm Abigail for a moment, who just messaged and said that she had another meeting tonight. So she forgot about the little podcast. So she just wrote a piece for the site that I recommend that everybody go check out at rockmnation.com about the schedule. Kind of the cool thing about Abigail covering cross country for us is that it's not a highly covered sport. So she basically can sit down with Coach Levermore. It's one of those two. Whoops.
I think it's Levermore. From what I remember her saying in
I was like, I read his name so much and now I can't remember which one it is. And I didn't write it in my notes. So apologies, Coach L. But anyway, he had told her, since basically she's the only one that's really covering cross country, that they can just have a chat whenever they want to. So she's gotten a lot of inside access. So her latest piece for the site, she went through each of the different races that they're going to be competing in and then talked to him about why they chose to compete in those races. And he seems a little, he really gets to the point. He's very direct. If you go back and read it, there's some words in there that I don't know if I can say on a podcast. They're not the bad ones, but he does use a little bit of colorful language when describing how the team may not have been prepared for some events last year. So you should definitely go check that out. And then their golf for Rory, that is coming, but it starts, I think she said last week, like around September 6th, 7th, something like that. So there isn't a lot on social media yet about the golf team. So there's not a whole lot of updates there. We'll see what comes. So let's switch over to out of season sports. And we're going to go to Dillon. And I'm going to put up the graphic for the women's basketball schedule, which was released in its entirety. All right, Dillon.
Yeah, I'm excited to write a full preview about this schedule, but I have a lot of thoughts. So it's interesting because they released it piece by piece. Like they got the conference opponents, like who they were playing at home and who they were playing away. So we already knew kind of where they were going to be playing at. Then the tracks. So for the most part, we knew almost all of these opponents and all these dates. Mm-hmm. So I did run over all of the conference opponents, which we knew ahead of time, thanks to those Tribune reports. A couple of changes from those. I think just the tiniest one, we'll start small. Jacksonville State was moved from December 1st to Monday, December 2nd. Doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Just thought it was worth noting. They added another home game on Sunday, December 29th against Jackson State, which is definitely an interesting week of Christmas and New Year's, but things will definitely be busy at Mizzou Arena around the holidays.
Yeah.
And then I think the biggest shocker in the non-conference was the 2 additions in the on the road. So when I saw the schedule and I saw the first one was an away match against Vermont, I had to do a double take. Like, what? They're traveling to Vermont. I got to admit, I haven't checked very much on this team. I'm not even sure. I don't even know if the Catamounts made it on out of the women's basketball side in 2022. That both their men's and their women's basketball teams do tend to have quite the storied history to them, but I can't quite say if they made it to the NCAA tournament. And then I think what was interesting is also Western Illinois, a team that, again, is not the most talented or most skilled. They're not a high-level mid-major like we've seen teams like Missouri State in the past. So it's a weird road game. And as looking at it, I'm just looking at that 3-hour trip to Macon, and I'm thinking, yeah, probably going to have to make that a trip sometime in mid-November, which I think it could be an exciting one for sure. Usually those high major at mid majors can get pretty rowdy. I remember the St. Louis Mizzou game last year, even though Mizzou did not come out on top, was a pretty good environment. So I'm actually very excited for that game. But for the most part, if you read my non-conference preview, it was a lot of home games. It felt like it was a lot of Coach P really gearing this team up with a lot of wins, trying to build a lot of confidence for a team that, again, is seeing a lot of turnover, especially with the transfers coming in. So really trying to build up those wins, build up that continuity heading into SEC schedule. And boy, is it a schedule. So I think the first thing I saw coming out was the South Carolina game at home right around New Year's, which to those of us who have been following women's basketball sounds very familiar to, I believe it was New Year's Eve 2020, back when they knocked off number 1 South Carolina in an absolute war in overtime, which was crazy.
Yeah,
looking at the rest
saw
of the
that
schedule,
and I was like, oh, Kieran's gonna have to come back from Florida early because I'm gonna need to be there.
You were talking about some of the unusual away games, and I can understand Vermont a little bit. It's probably kind of a cool place to visit during the winter, right? They probably have maple syrup or something. But and I say this with love, knowing several people who either have went to Western Illinois or are currently going to Western Illinois. But there is absolutely no reason to go to Macomb, Illinois, unless you are attending Western Illinois University. And that's a head scratcher to me. I really would not want to be visiting Macomb, Illinois in the middle of December, other than trying to get what will most likely be an easy win. But one of the things that also sticks out to me, you talked about South Carolina, in 5 days, 5 or less days, they go from playing Jackson State to playing South Carolina. This is a very light schedule, I think it's fair to say. Robin Pinishin went to the Cupcakery and bought herself a dozen. And going from Jackson State to South Carolina, I really don't see how this schedule is going to prepare him for that step up.
I'm going to switch over to Matthew with wrestling. So you said something about the Tiger Style invite.
That is correct.
Coming again. Tell us about that.
Yep, Tiger Style invite is back for another year. They announced that on August 20th. It's going to be in Kansas City again at Staley High School, known as the home of the Elams. They're going to be competing against Cal Poly, Little Rock, Maryland, Purdue, and SIUE this season. So you get 2 Big Ten teams. You have Little Rock, which is kind of a more recent up-and-coming program. They had a really good year last year. And then, kind of your fillers, SIUE is a local squad. You have Cal Poly as well. But they scheduled this similar to last year. They scheduled this on a football Saturday. It's going to be on November 9th, which a lot of you probably have circled on your calendars because that's when Mizzou's playing Oklahoma. And last year they had the Tiger Style invite, and it was the same day that Mizzou played Tennessee. So they seem to keep scheduling these the same day as really big Mizzou football games. I'm not quite sure what the reasoning behind that is. That just has been the way that it's panned out.
Maybe they figure that the audiences don't overlap that much, though I feel like they do. But
Yeah, and one of the other things is that it also is in Kansas City, so maybe they're thinking that there aren't going to be a ton of people, wrestling fans in Kansas City, who would go to a football game in Columbia versus a Mizzou wrestling event in KC. That's my best guess, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just kind of weird that they've scheduled it that way for the past 2 seasons. Who knows? They may have scheduled it that way for the past 3 seasons. I just wasn't there.
Well, and also since it's at Staley High School, they also have to contend with what other sporting events are going on there. So I'm sure that there's some rhyme or reason into that we just aren't aware of. You should ask Coach Smith about that though at some point. Why? What are you doing, Coach? Why are you scheduling stuff during big football games?
Yeah, that's and I mean that's an all-day event too. It starts around 10 a.m. I think, and it goes all the way until 5, 6 o'clock, even possibly, maybe a little less than that. But it is an all-day event, so if you decide to watch it, you're probably gonna miss the first quarter, maybe even the first half of the Oklahoma game, depending on if it's a 3:30 game or a 7. If it's a 7, you're good, but if it's a 3:30, then you may miss some of the football action.
Yeah, I can't remember offhand. That's what I get for not being a football person. Is I don't remember what the time frame they were given for that game is.
I think the Oklahoma was one of the flex ones where it could be either 3:30 or 7, and then they'll determine that based on TV schedules when you get closer into the game.
Okay. And
that's
then what was that?
I said that's all I got schedule wise. That's the new news that we have for wrestling right now. So it's pretty slow on the wrestling front. Season is still a couple months away. Transfer portal is pretty much winded down, so everybody's just slowly getting ready for the year.
Awesome. Thank you. So on behalf of Abigail, last week she told us that Sterling Scott, who is just coming into his sophomore year at the university, he's a triple jumper. He is currently competing in the U20 World Athletics Championships in Lima, Peru. And you guys, Sterling Scott is amazing. I mean, we knew this already, but he's really, really good. So I don't really know how, this just sounds great to me. A new personal best. That sounds amazing. Clearing 16.29 meters. That seems really far.
I think that says 53 feet and 5.25 inches.
Yeah. So he won his flight, and he will now be competing in the finals on Friday. So way to go, Sterling. Proud of you. And then moving on to updates for Rory, just a couple of swimming things. So Mizzou Swim and Dive has brought on a new assistant diving coach, which when I saw this, if anybody had read my piece about what's going to happen to the Olympic sports, this made me extremely happy to see that they have brought in a new assistant coach who is a 2-time Olympian, nonetheless, to help with the diving program, because that signals to me that they're not just going to forget about the diving program. So that's awesome, especially as we know that roster sizes are getting trimmed, and it just makes me happy that they are going to continue to focus on diving. So the new coach's name is, oh my, I don't know how to say it. Give me a moment, and I'm going to see if I can figure this out. Brandon Lasciavo.
Yeah, Losciavo or Lasciavo.
Yeah,
I feel
something like
those are the
that.
best bets.
So he comes from the land of diving. And if you didn't know what the land of diving is, that would be known as the great state of Indiana. They produce divers out there. It is absolutely crazy. So he is a 2-time Olympic qualifier and a former NCAA champion for Purdue, who produces crazy amounts of good Olympic divers. Like, I feel like almost all of the divers in the Olympics for the United States either came from Purdue or Indiana University. Like that was like basically the place they came from. So he did 10-meter platform dive. He has over 3 years of coaching experience, and I'm reading this from the MU Tigers release, specialized in crafting core programs and enhancing athlete performance in and out of the pool. He most recently was a volunteer assistant at Purdue. He's from California. He qualified for the 10-meter in each of the last 2 Olympic Games. He finished 11th in the Tokyo Games and 17th in this last Olympics. So that is really awesome. So welcome, Brandon. Excited to see what you can do with the diving program, and excited that we will have Rory to hopefully attend some meets and provide some extensive updates for both swimming and diving. The only other thing that I saw that came out of swimming was that 2 members of the team were chosen as officers for the Mizzou Student Athlete Advisory Committee. Taylor Williams and Calvin Windle. So Taylor was selected as a co-president and Calvin was selected as a vice president. So that's really awesome. Swim and dive is known for having very, very good grades. All the Olympic sports, just full of smarties, you guys. So congratulations to them. Moving on. For me, I'll start with softball first because this one's really quick. Just saw today that Maddie Gallagher, recent grad and New York native, got her first post-grad job. She will be working for the Buffalo Bills in customer relations. So that's pretty awesome. I think she might have been one of the ones, Dillon, you would probably remember this. I feel like she was one of the ones that may have worked at like one of the other big athletic events as a helper or assistant of some sort in the past. I know that there were some people on the softball team that were kind of working in that role, like that were parks and tourism or whatever that majors, the sports management type of deal. So that's really cool for her.
Okay.
And then for gymnastics, congratulations to Mari Celestine. She was named the president of the National Panhellenic Council. She is also currently the president of Sigma Gamma Rho, which is one of the Divine Nine sororities on campus. So that's pretty cool. Big leadership position for her. And then the last of my apparatus previews came out today, and that was floor exercise. I know that I had mentioned last week that the depth on floor for Mizzou is going to be crazy. It is going to be crazy. Let me show you how crazy it is going to be. So, this is just my own list has 12 people on it that could feasibly be part of the floor rotation. And these are all people who have either scored 9.9 pluses or could very well. So you have, apologies that I just put everybody by nicknames on mine. The rest of my colleagues did other ones. So you have Jocelyn Moore, Kennedy Griffin, Amari Celestine, Hannah Horton, Elise Tisler, who is a grad transfer from Towson, another black and gold school. And then I have Olivia Kelly, who is a freshman from New Jersey in the 6th spot. And then there are all these other options who I couldn't decide what to do with, but could very well find their way in the options. So you have Kaya, whose last name I would butcher, so we're not going to say it. Starts with a T. It's like Taskanen, something like that. She is a member of the Finnish national team, but grew up in Michigan. She is one that's definitely going to find her way in there. Lisa Siebert is a freshman. Ayla Acevedo is also a freshman. Abby Mueller is a grad transfer from Illinois. Raina Light was on the team last year. She's a sophomore. And then Laura McPherson is a transfer from San Jose State. So it's like all the ones that are not freshmen, which we don't really know what their scores are going to be, have all scored at the very least 9.9. So that is absolutely insane amount of depth that they have there. So that's been really fun. Shout out to the Maneaters, Nate Salzman, and College Gymnastic News, Claire Billman, for their help with this. They have taught me a lot, and I hope that the people that read the piece learned a bit too. I even tried to incorporate some videos. My dad told me he watched Kaya's video today and was like, oh, that's some stuff you see people in the Olympics doing. Yes. That's what I was going for. And then the last thing I have for gymnastics is, I know last week I alluded to some sort of super secret that I still don't know what it is. Though after talking with Nate Salzman, we think maybe it could be schedule related, because Jade Carey, Olympic medalist Jade Carey, is out at Oregon State. Oregon State doesn't have a conference. So maybe Mizzou's going to bring in some fancy schmancy non-con opponents, and we'll get to watch, someone like Jade Carey in Hearns. So that would be really awesome. I still tend to think that it's still recruiting related, whether it be they nabbed a new recruit or somebody in the 2025 class reclasses and comes early or something. Claire at CGN had told me that is something that she's known to that happens, that when you have a team that's as stacked as Mizzou is, that really could go all in this year with in Jocelyn and Amari's last year, for example, that you may get some of these commits to come in early to like really add even more to the depth. So that's just something to watch. We don't know. Shannon and Jackie are not revealing those cards just yet. But again, when I find out, I will let you all know. So I think all we have left is our closing with what are we working on? Dillon, I'm sure you've got another Tiger target.
Yeah. So again, I'm loving these weekly Tiger targets. Kind of recapping the last week of Mizzou Soccer while previewing what's up next. It's going to be a little bit of recap heavy with 2 games and only the one in Miami, but I think there's still a lot to talk about, especially what's not working offensively. What can they do? What's it all about playing in the middle of the field? A lot of fun stuff. I'm not going to spoil too much of it. So that'll come out on Thursday. So that way you can mix in a little bit of soccer with all your football hype coming into Murray State. That's for sure. And then apart from that, I'm going to keep it a little. I'm going to keep it a little hush hush for now, but I've got some things in the works. So.
Okay, I was going to ask about one of those things, but we'll play that close to the vest right now. Matthew, when can we expect to see these volleyball previews?
I am in the red zone, probably at about 15-yard line. I think that pretty much 4 or 5 of them are done. I just need to plug in a couple of quotes here and there, which is going to be a small section of it. But other than that, 4 or 5 are done. The 5th one is nearly done. There are just a few small things that I have to add. I've been plugging away at that early schoolwork to try to make sure I don't have to do anything over this weekend because I'm going to be covering the team at the Blue Jay Invitational in Omaha. So I'm looking at my schedule on Canvas, and it looks like I've been doing a pretty good job, so I should have plenty of time tomorrow to finish those up. Not surprisingly, I don't have any homework due Thursday, so professors seem to have figured out that nobody's going to be doing homework Thursday, and they're all going to be.
Well, they don't want any of us on campus.
Yeah. So it looks like, I'm going to have a window. Should have it done tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to get the first one out on either Thursday or Friday.
Awesome. I asked that because I am genuinely a volleyball fan, but also because I'm your boss. So Abigail will be recapping the first cross-country meet of the year, which is the 30th. I'm not sure yet if she'll be doing that in written form or audio version. If she does do it in audio version, we will stick it up here on the Majority Rules site for everyone to listen to. Rory is working on a golf preview of sorts that will be up sometime before the first competition kicks off. So that'll be in the coming week. As for me, I don't have any idea what I am doing next. If someone would give me some gymnastics news, maybe I would write about that. There isn't really anything to talk about with softball, so I'm just kind of waiting to see if anything pops out for me to write about. So that's about it for us. One last thing before we get out of here. Please head over to rockmnation.com and read all the work that we do. There's so much work, you guys. Like, we have so many student journalists working for us. It is amazing. We have really amazing other writers as well. We have a crew of like 6,000 football writers, I feel like. They're submitting things for me to check as we're recording this. So hope someone else checked them. So there's so much over there. Something for everybody. More than enough for everybody, some may say. So go ahead and head over there. Read our stuff. Also, You can support us by subscribing to RockM Plus. If you go to rockm.plus, it is only $5 a month, you guys. And there is some good content in there. The message boards are happening. Matthew Harris and Matt Watkins share so much basketball scoops over there. It is crazy. The amount of content that they put in over there.
You talked about the possible scheduling scoops for volleyball. We have some of those for wrestling. That schedule hasn't been finalized, but some likely matchups, things that we've heard, we've put together information over there. So that's available at RockM Plus. You can get some early info on some of those wrestling matchups. You can see who's going to be coming to the Hearn Center this year.
That is fantastic. I'm going to see if I can do one more thing. I don't know if it'll work because now I don't know where I found it. I wanted to see if I could embed Dan's ad about the RockM football preview podcast or preview magazine. So even though, we care the most about Olympic sports, you guys, we still care about the rest of the site. And Matthew contributed a little bit to this. I read every single word, all hundreds of pages of it. So over the summer, people worked very, very hard on a preview magazine. And you should buy one because it's super cool. And you can get that when you join rockm.plus. You get a cheaper, you get a coupon off of it, or you can buy it by itself. I think it's $15. My dad got one. Did your families all get one? No?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. That sounds good. All right. Well, I think that's everything. Technical difficulties aside, I think we went a little bit shorter, but we tried. We will be here next week. Maybe it's just the three of us. Maybe it's just me, Who knows?
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Tune in to see who appears on your screen. And have fun at the football game. I assume you guys are all going.
Yep.
I'll be there, probably sweating to death.
I've got my tiger print cowboy hat from the Cotton Bowl already ready to go.
Nice. So, yeah. See you next time, and go Tigers. M-I-Z.
Z-O-U. I think.
Z-O-U.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we dropped the ball on that one. We'll try better next time.
Oh my God.
Did we get it?
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to RockM Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. RockM Radio is the official podcast network of RockM Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of RockM Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of RockM Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find RockM Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of RockM Radio coming to you soon.